Recycled aluminum is coming for your water and your iPad.
100% recycled aluminum.
Just water, but I feel good about it.
More and more companies are making products out of recycled aluminum as a way to go green and to help solve a big problem: plastic pollution. Unlike plastic, aluminum can be recycled almost indefinitely, so it has the potential to put a huge dent in the mountains of plastic waste we produce. But is aluminum's future really as bright as all the hype suggests? You probably know that plastic is a real problem. It's made using fossil fuels, and lots of them. Globally, we produce 400 million tons of plastic every year. And when we're done with it, most ends up in landfills or the ocean. What's worse, less than 10% of all plastics ever made have been recycled. But there's a broader problem with plastic recycling. Even when a plastic bottle actually gets recycled, it usually doesn't become another plastic bottle.
The issue is a little bit more complex than the general media would have you believe.
That's Uday Patel. He's a senior researcher with the energy consulting firm Wood Mackenzie, and he says that bottles containing, say, fizzy drinks are actually made from layers of different polymers.
When you try and then recycle them, it's far more difficult to separate all the constituent polymers out, then convert that back into another bottle ready for use.
Instead of being perfectly recycled, plastics like these usually get downcycled. Those bottles might end up as fibers in a pillow or maybe a garbage bin. Since most of that stuff can't be recycled, the plastic ends up in the trash eventually. Downcycling just delays the inevitable. Finding alternatives to plastic is where aluminum comes in. Unlike plastics, aluminum isn't considered a dead-end waste stream. An aluminum can become yet another aluminum can pretty much without losing anything in the process. The average aluminum can contains almost 70% recycled content. That's more than 3 times the recycled content than EPA estimates for glass or plastic. And almost 75% of all the aluminum produced to date is still in use today, though some environmental advocates think that number is lower. Aluminum hasn't always been a popular choice for beverage containers because it's more expensive than plastic. But as plastic gets a bad rap, more and more people are becoming fans of the aluminum can. Coca-Cola and Pepsi announced this year that they're working to roll out water packaged in aluminum as part of their efforts to cut down on plastic waste. And then there's Jason Momoa, who announced a new line of canned water in April and made some big claims along the way.
There's only one thing that can really help our planet and save our planet as long as we recycle. And that's aluminum.
But whether we take a sip from a can or a bottle, that container comes with an environmental cost. As consumers, it's easier to see the pollution from our trash than the destruction from manufacturing. But the manufacturing is often much worse. Even though aluminum is one of the most abundant metals on Earth's crust, it's not so easy to extract. It's hidden away in this bauxite ore. Up to 5 tons of bauxite might need to be mined in order to get 1 ton of aluminum. And to separate the aluminum from the bauxite, it goes through a chemical process that leaves behind a toxic red sludge. Making aluminum also releases super potent greenhouse gases called perfluorocarbons. It actually takes about twice as much energy to produce new aluminum as it does to produce new plastic. But recycling aluminum saves about 90% of the energy it took to make it. So to reap the most environmental rewards of using aluminum, we ought to make sure we're sinking our money into recycled and not virgin aluminum. Some companies are getting that memo. Over the past couple years, Apple started making cases for its laptops, iPads, and watches with 100% recycled aluminum. But the net environmental benefits aren't totally clear yet.
This is one of those instances where disentangling the marketing from the actual manufacturing practice is hard to do without fuller disclosure from the company in question.
That's Josh Leposki, a professor at Memorial University of Newfoundland who maps the international movement of electronic waste.
Using recycled metals, especially recycled aluminum by manufacturers, that in itself is not new. Apple may be presenting it as a new development for them.
He points out that recycling isn't a perfect process either, especially when it comes to electronics, which can be loaded with toxic stuff that can harm the environment and people after being thrown away.
Getting recycled materials is an industrial process, and as an industrial process, it can be very ugly and have real harm. Workers in recycling plants can experience harm. There's no question.
Cans and iPads are just pieces of the global demand for aluminum. Aluminum production boomed from 2010 to 2018, thanks in part to China's industrialization. But since 2018, trade wars and slowing growth in China curbed demand. Some experts do see signs of a rebound, and it might be thanks in part to aluminum cans.
Change in consumer tastes and preferences that will dictate what happens there. But certainly, with some of our contacts within the industry, we're hearing of increasing interest in the use of aluminium can stock. All of a sudden, it's gotten a little bit more, sexy. It's become a little bit more buzzwordy.
More aluminum demand might be good for business, but you can probably see where this is going. Eco-friendly consumption is still consumption, and it can even be self-defeating. It's a problem called Jevons paradox. In the 19th century, William Jevons argued that making coal use more efficient actually led to people using more coal instead of less of it. The same could happen for aluminum. The takeaway is that aluminum isn't going to save the world. We don't want to solve one problem, too much plastic, by creating a new one, too much aluminum.